We'll get started in just a minute here. I'm Kim Churches, CEO of AAUW. We're so delighted to be offering this Equity Network programming every week to you while we're living together through this pandemic, and hope to be able to provide some great information tonight on how to build a network professionally when you're working virtually. How do you do that? And how do you think about mentorship and sponsorship in this time? So we'll together go through some ideas here of how best to be maximizing our professional presence during this really, really strange and uncertain time that we're all living through together. So first, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Nakia, and then for some kind of housekeeping and how we're, if you haven't been on one of our webinars, how we're going about doing these. Okay, I'll turn it over to Nakia.
Thank you so much, Kim. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining our Equity Network webinar. If you've joined one of our previous webinars, welcome back. If this is your first time here, I'm glad that you can join us. And you can find all of our previous webinar recordings on our Equity Network webpage at aauw.org. This webinar is also being recorded and will be available on our website next week, so no worries. I know that most of us have been stuck at home the last few weeks, and so I'm really glad that you're here for this opportunity to boost your professional development. We've created the Equity Network so that even during times like this, there are ways that we can continue to network and to build community and to empower ourselves and others with learning opportunities. So in that way, we can be better champions for equity and inclusion wherever we are in our career or our studies. It's important for us here at AAUW to know how we can best continue to serve our communities, especially during this time. So if there's a workshop or a topic that you'd like us to offer, feel free to share in the chat box below, or you can shoot me an email at equity@aauw.org. With that, I'm going to turn this back over to our CEO, Kim, who will be leading today's program. So please enjoy.
Great. Thanks so much, Nakia, and delighted so many of you are joining us. I'm standing, if you can believe it, I have created the world's strangest standing desk here with Lego boxes, coffee table books, stationery boxes, and my laptop just to be able to move my body a little bit. Here in Washington, D.C., it's positively glorious weather, and I hope wherever you are too, you'll get a chance to get out and breathe some fresh air, safely, of course, but it's really important during these times that we take care of ourselves and also get a little bit of fresh air whenever we can. So I am now going to share my screen with you all. There we go. All right. Hopefully you can all see what I'm seeing now, which is our presentation. And as Nikki and I have been saying, this is really about how to build your virtual network. This is more of a professional development session tonight with just some ideas that I've pulled together and hope that we can all talk through. Again, if you've got questions, as Nakia said throughout this, feel free to put them in the Q&A. If you've got ideas for other panels and conversations in the future that we can do together through the Equity Network, don't hesitate to put those in at the chat box too. So, but why we're talking about this tonight is, you know, a lot of us might be on YouTube, watching TED videos or masterclass. You might be reading Harvard Business Review or professional development books during this time. But the one thing we're not really able to do right now is obviously professionally network in the ways that we once did. So we're not going to happy hour networking sessions. We're not going to our alumni association events. We can't go to brown bag lunch chats. We can't get together for an 8 or 10 people around a lunch table to talk about ideas. And we're not going to professional conferences for training, which not only give you substance, but they also give you that great opportunity to build your network. So I'm going to give you, a few ideas that I've been thinking about during this time. And also, given my role, I get a lot of human beings who ask me to mentor them, which I love to do. It's some of my most favorite things, is helping people problem solve and think about their careers, or to deal with toxic environments, which comes up, how to handle difficult conversations, and how to get ahead in your careers, regardless of industry or sector. So we'll talk a little bit about the differences between mentorship and sponsorship, and how you can build your network, mentors, and sponsor relationships during this really, really crazy time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so networking. I mean, I think everybody that's on this call, you're all savvy human beings. You know what networking means, and I'm sure you know why we need it. But if you're an introvert, it can also cause a lot of angst and worry and a sweat factor, for real. And even for those of us who are a little bit more extroverted like me, I have an introverted extroverted split in my personality, and I too can feel anxious going into new environments, particularly now because we don't get to watch body language as much. Sure, you can see my face right now, but you're not seeing everybody on this Zoom webinar. So, not being able to network in person makes it even tougher for us. And while I know that no matter what, networking is definitely learnable, it just takes a lot of practice. And it's definitely learnable even during this session right now and of this time that we're in during this health crisis and economic shutdown in a lot of ways. So let's go ahead and think about the fact also on networking that it's not just about what your needs are, it's also the needs of the person or persons with whom you're networking with, right? So because it is about a relationship, it's a two-way street. And we'll talk about that a lot tonight. Because I think that's a really important thing, that you're not only sharing what your needs are as you're thinking about your career path, but also actively listening to the human you're engaging with. So these are some obvious things. I'm just going to close my boxes so I can see the screens fully. And you can do that easily too if you want to go in the upper right corner and close the video boxes so you can see the full screen. But let's talk a little bit here about why strategic networking matters. And obviously a lot of these things on the screen you already know. It's about, certainly increasing your visibility so people know who you are, know what your assets are, know what you bring to the table regardless of your industry or sector. It also helps you really gain in status, and so that's perceived power. And it also allows you to continue to build more right relationships. And with those, you can get more done in your career. I mean, it just matters. Networking really matters. But I think it's also important to say when we're talking about being strategic in our networking is far too often a lot of us just tend to go to the easy space, and we end up networking with folks who have the exact same credentials as us because it feels safe. If you're going to be strategic about it, you really almost need to create a matrix of what you're missing in your network. And you truly want to have diverse backgrounds in your network. And that level of strong diversity, and that's in industry. So let's say you're an educator. You don't want to have just people in education and academe in your network. You might want some in the private sector. You might want some, in healthcare providers, et cetera, because you're going to gain different perspectives through that. And you definitely want people in your network that are at a lot of different levels within their careers, because you're going to learn and grow bottom up and top down and side to side as well. So really it's important because you're going to get a lot of various perspectives, which are going to be key to you in continuing growing both your network and what you're trying to accomplish in your career. Now my computer, there we go. Okay. Oh, by the way, I do have 2 dogs, one of whom barks a lot. So if you hear barking, my apologies. It's just real life. I'm doing this from my kitchen counter. So as we think about this really strange and scary time we're in here, I want to ask a question of all of you of how do you think we can actually virtually network in this weird time? Think about that, and you might want to put something in the chat box or in Q&A as you think about it. But how can you virtually network? And I'm just going to kind of pull up the chat here while we're talking and just see where folks are. Oh, this is great. A lot of people are on LinkedIn, totally. And I'm gonna spend a lot of time on LinkedIn tonight too. So I'm glad to see that in the chat box. And I'm seeing somebody is writing in that you're attending more webinars and virtual chat forums to engage with folks. That really, really matters, just like sessions like tonight. And I'm hoping you're doing other ones outside of AAUW's Equity Network too. Do keep Nakia and I posted on what's working for you and what's not. We're actually thinking about doing some more programming on YouTube as well, and other spaces. So, let's think about this. And in a time of this strange time that we're in, obviously you're all seeing that you can virtually network, certainly through LinkedIn, certainly through social media, and through a lot of other formats, including your alumni association. So now let's talk a little bit about the power of relationships. And these are 4 categories that have been around for a long time as we think about it. We talked already that you have to be strategic in how you're thinking about networking, not just going to your safe space, but really making sure that you also are looking at what you don't have in your network to build more. So as you think about these, let's talk about influencers, experts, creators, and connectors for a second. So influencers, I mean, you all know, you're on social media every day. We know who influencers are. They have really large audiences. They carry a lot of weight and power in that. Experts would be people very specific to an industry or sector, but they provide us the wisdom and direction in that field. And so they're very important to have as well. Creators, these are really obvious ones. These are innovators. They know all about, they're tracking all the trends. They are on the cutting edge of particular industries or sectors. And you really want to make sure you're getting a mix of all of these in your network. And then connectors, you know, those people like me, if I'm meeting you right now and you're telling me about something and it reminds me about my friend Amy and my other friend Steve, I want to make sure and connect you all so that you can continue to grow in your relationship. So those are folks who, you know, seem to literally know everyone and just can't wait to connect people to others and make introductions. So, you know, as you think about this, I want you to think about why you think it's important that we have all four of these areas in our networks. And out of all of these, which one is the most important and why? You know, for me, I don't think any one is more important. I will say, you know, in my own network, the experts and the creators have been really key for me, but likewise, so have connectors and influencers, because they're helping me to broaden, you know, my aperture and open it up and think differently about the world. But I know when I was growing in nonprofit management, and really starting out in the early 1990s, I needed those experts to help me hone my skills. And I needed those influencers who could help me continue to grow too. And then I kind of broadened out into other fields. So, you know, if you're early in your career, you might be wanting to look more to your specific industry and gain some experts first. And then as you continue to grow, build out that power of all of those relationships. Now, you know, one other thing I'd say is think about your own network, and you might even do this after this call tonight. It's a good activity. Kind of go through your LinkedIn, you know, go through your contacts in your phone, think about who your references have been and the like, and kind of think about and do some, be really honest about what's missing in your network and what you might need to help you to grow more. Another thing that is really sad to have to say is that there's a gender lens to this. So for example, you have to be mindful of the fact that there's a gender bias around creators and influencers. Too often, men are billed as the creators and women as influencers. And that's just good old-fashioned bias that we think of men as more as more of being creators, and women might be influencers, but they're not always seen as creators even when they are. They get billed differently. So make sure you're checking your own bias on this as well. Okay, so I don't have to. I mean, a lot of you are already bringing up the power of social media and all of your connectivity, and we'll talk about that in the end in the Q&A session of tonight. But, you know, these are leadership tools as well. But I think it's really important to think about which of these tools is best for which audience. So how I am on LinkedIn is not how I am on Instagram. How I am on Twitter is not how I am with close family and friends on Facebook. And so you want to have a consistent personal brand. Maybe some of you were on the personal branding session last week with my colleague, Laura. And while you want to have a consistent brand that you're pushing out so people perceive you in the way that you wish to be perceived, you also need to have different voices on different mediums, right? So these platforms all offer different ways of working. So, you know, for example, on Instagram for me, it's kind of, I can get a little cheekier. It's a little bit more of a personal blend and business blend. LinkedIn is very much more buttoned up and professional. And Twitter, sometimes I get more into news, political and advocacy, as well as professional. So I change up my voice around it. And you can, you know, get outside your safe zone a little bit here, but authenticity is really key of how you're thinking about all of these various tools. And frankly, if you're not on these, at least on LinkedIn, certainly for what we're talking about tonight, get on now, because it's another way beyond your resume and your cover letter to be perceived of where your skill sets are, what your assets are, and what you bring to the table. And you don't want third parties figuring out and deciding what your personal brand is for you. You want to be able to control that yourself. So I promised you we'd talk a little bit about LinkedIn, and this is a biggie for me. There's a lot of good tips on the screen here, but I really think it is a numbers game, and I think it's so key to constantly be building those concentric circles out. You know, you're going to have your immediacy, your friends, your family, folks you went to college with, alumni networks, whatever. But I want you to go beyond that too and think about, jobs you may be interviewed for that maybe you didn't get, but you really connected with the hiring manager, or you really connected with some of the people you met in that process. You might be involved in a nonprofit. You might have helped out in some of the food banks right now that are so desperately needed, or the like. Build out in those ways as well. And I think as we're thinking about, LinkedIn and making sure we're using it the best ways we can, is also thinking about word choices. So, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I would say, some of the things that you've got some time right now to work on your LinkedIn profile. And making sure it is really up to date. You can obviously ask for informational interviews or for a quick chat with somebody that's in your network that you admire and you want to learn from. But I'd say before you do that, make sure that your keywords and your personal branding is on your profile. So for example, one area that I'd like you to really think about is the skills section on LinkedIn. You should try and use as many of those and fill up. You can have a maximum of 50, and your goal should be to get to as many of those possibly that you can. And keywords on this, as well throughout it. So that's everywhere in your profile, in the skills section, in projects you've worked on, in job choices, whatever. And if you're having trouble thinking, everybody has a hard time writing about themselves. That's totally normal. I still do as well. You feel like you're bragging a little bit. So go ahead and look at people who have similar jobs as you do. Take a look at some of their keywords. Think about when you see job postings on LinkedIn of things you'd be interested in. What are the kind of adjectives, verbs, and nouns they're using that are appealing for you? But I'd also say, even though you want to use industry lingo so that those keyword matchups and people can find you, that's really key in this. I mean, it's kind of a game, right? It's like a word find game. But because you're using a lot of that lingo, I want you to really work on backing it up, not just with words like experienced or creative, but really honing in on what you did to show your experience or your creativity. So, pinpoint areas that make you experienced. If you're saying, you're experienced in program management, give an example or two of, I scaled up a program that was local in my community and now is in 6 counties in the state serving X number of people. Or on creative, describe how you are creative. That I fixed something that we'd been doing in our office for 7 years and realized it could be done much faster, online with this resource. And I saved human capital and financial resources for my organization. So that sort of innovative work of being able to back up your work on LinkedIn will help you as well. And, I think we a lot of times like to say that we're focused, highly attentive to detail and the like. But I think, again, you've got to talk about how you've achieved those goals, what you went about to show that commitment to finishing a project, and that'll serve you really, really well. So, I think as we think about maximizing LinkedIn, just in terms of how we present to the world, it's really making sure the qualitative information is there and as much quantitative information as possible too. So what do I mean by that? Whenever I get somebody who's applying for a job while I've been at AAUW or many other leadership roles I've had, I'm always looking for those quants. What did you do that took you up 22%? How did you scale something? And as well as the qualitative to get to your problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. So you want to make sure you've got a mix of that in your LinkedIn profile. And think about somebody's LinkedIn profile that you really like, and then take a fresh eye to your own to try and rewrite sections. This is a great time for that. To post or not to post, I have on here as well, is about sharing content. I really think I'm actually been woefully behind in sharing content of late on LinkedIn, but you can even reshare somebody else's. Like Nikia put up on hers the other day, I noticed, for tonight's, and I just reshared hers and sent it out to my network as well. You also can do, and you'll see this at the end of the session, because I'm going to encourage you all, if you'd like to reach out to me if you're not connected to me on LinkedIn, and I'll give you my handle for it at the end of this. But you can add that to your signature line as well. So even when you're doing your work remotely right now and you're sending out emails and the like, add your Twitter handle, add your LinkedIn handle, just so that people can also connect with you in more obvious ways in those regards, not just via email and through work. And this last thing, that you're open to connecting. Even if you're super happy in your job and you want to, it's okay to connect with other humans and to hear and learn from others all the time. That's part of our professional development. So I think making sure you're telling folks that you're open to it is really important too. Now, I talked in the very beginning that this is also about a two-way street. These are relationships. And so I want you to think a little bit about whether or not you're just coming at this with just your needs, or if you're also helping your network to continue to grow in their own ways. And one of the biggest ones on this, there's lots of good things on this screen right now, but it's follow through. If you tell somebody you're going to do it, and do it as soon as possible, because that follow through really matters in managing and growing your network. And I know you all understand why. It's the same thing of, as your mom and family probably taught you growing up, sending a thank you card still really matters when you get a gift. And that's a gift to your network by following through. And thinking about it of ways of, again, you can be a connector and you can make introductions. You can promote other people's work and give kudos on any one of these things for interesting things you see within your network. And I think that also really helps you to make sure that you're providing real value, and it's not just what you're taking from your network, but also what you're giving back. Hope that makes sense. Hey, by the way, you can also invite your network to attend some of these sessions. Anybody that might have, you can promote what we're doing with this too, and share and invite folks to join you in this way virtually during this, during the pandemic. Okay, I know last week, and if you haven't seen it, we have one on personal branding that'll be on our website. I believe it's already up. And this is, who your brand is really important. That's how you're perceived. And I talk with folks a lot about how I'm perceived, because I want to be seen as transparent, as innovative. There's certain things that I want to make sure, but I'm also double checking that with other people so that I know how I am perceived. So while we talked about personal branding, it's how you think you're seen and how you're actually seen can be two different things. So I'd really encourage you, if you have a mentor or a sponsor or a couple trusted people in your network, is to kind of just ask them and say, what do you think, when you think of me, what do you think of if I was a brand? What do you think of today? And all of that will help you to get to being able to push forward more of who you want to be and how you're growing. And, all of this is a confidence game thing. I said in the very beginning, for those of us that are a little introverted, even those of us that are a little extroverted or fully on one side or the other, you have to gain confidence in networking. And it only comes from doing. Practice, practice, practice. None of us were great at negotiating our very first salary, for example, but by practicing, you get better at this. Presenting in front of a crowd, you get better at it by practicing. And networking is the same way. At in-person events, we know we have to come loaded with good questions to ask. We know we can walk slowly and look for the most talkative group to become a part of. And we know we can offer handshakes and give eye contact. It's much harder to do that virtually right now. So how do you do this online? One is, you can reach out through your LinkedIn network, through your professional network at work or whatever. You can reach out to me after this and just say, I'd love to have a little chat about what you're working on during this really scary time and how you're thinking about your work going forward and how it might be disrupted or changed. You can comment on a posting you've read and say, boy, I'd love to DM you and hear more about that. You can send, private DMs regularly and schedule time to talk. You can post an interesting article that you've seen about your industry or about a passionate area that you're interested in terms of advocacy, or whether it's animals or it's healthcare, whatever it is. You can post something you've seen and invite comments and say, what do you think? And see if you can engage your network in those ways. I'll give you one personal example I've done recently. You know, there are so many, now I think it's 30 as of today, sadly 33 million people who filed for unemployment during this really scary time. So it's the health crisis coupled with an economic downspin that is really, really scary and is hitting so many people. And certain industries obviously are getting hit harder than others, and we know what they are. But one CEO who happens to be in my universe because of past work is Arne Sorensen, CEO of Marriott. And I've been so impressed with his honesty, candor, transparency, and his strong voice, even as he's had to furlough and lay off so many employees in the hotel company, that I shared it and liked it. I sent a private message to him and just thanked him for his support, leadership, and by really giving a true and authentic voice throughout this with honesty and candor. And that matters because I'm giving him feedback saying that, you know, I think what you're doing really matters and is helping people to really grapple with the situation we're in right now. So you can do that as well within your own network, particularly as you're moving up. And you can also, you know, another thing that's easy to do is, you know, reaching out via email or through one of these various social media networks and just asking somebody for advice or ideas on other people you should be following or connected with. And that's such an easy thing to do. Everybody can think of 1, 2, or 3 people, and it's another way to stay engaged. So again, you only build confidence by practicing, and I hope you'll practice tonight after this session. Okay, does everybody know the difference between mentors and sponsors? This is a biggie, and this cartoon is a super way of looking at it. So we all know what mentors are, but a lot of us, particularly for women, we're woefully underutilizing sponsors or seeking sponsors. So mentors essentially advise you. They provide you counsel that's directly to your needs. Sponsors advocate for you when you're not even in the room, meaning they're talking behind your back in glowing ways and helping you to move forward. And studies have shown that women and non-binary folks are totally over-mentored and under-sponsored. So how many of you feel you have both in your network? We know we've got mentors, and in many cases, women have several mentors, but now's a great time to take stock of what your professional desires are for the next 2 to 5 years and really think about, as you're thinking about your professional network, also lay on that layer of mentoring and sponsoring, because not always do we have both, and you really need both. I would also say on mentors, make sure, just as I said in the beginning on building your network here, that you're not seeking out mentors that are all in your same industry. Again, getting that valuable outside perspective from others is going to help you to grow and harness new skills too. I'm just going to peek in here because I'm seeing the Q&A and the chat box going crazy. So I just want to make sure, let's see here if there are any big, yep, just mentors. Yep. Oh, that's interesting. Somebody's saying they've got a summer virtual internship, but not sure how confident and how to earn that reference letter or build a strong relationship with colleagues without ever meeting them in person. Boy, that is a terrific one. And let's actually just take a moment on that. So Tiffany, I would say to you on that, I would really consider doing some things by Skype, by FaceTime, by video, by Zoom, whatever, so that you can get to know them a little bit better. And really asking, your colleagues about them, about their work right now. So not just about what you need out of that reference letter, but really building that relationship to better understand them will help you to get to that reference letter. So even though you can't see them, in 3-dimensional ways and work side by side and shoulder to shoulder, I think you can do a lot to build on that. And if you need more on that, you'll get my email at the end, and I'll be happy to talk through that. I have another comment here of somebody who said that they were laid off this week. I'm so very sorry. I've had a lot of friends and folks affected in those ways too, furloughs and layoffs, and it's incredibly scary. And I can feel my throat closing up just thinking about all of you that are facing with that. And this person's saying, is it acceptable to post about the experience and ask for leads? It is. I would keep it in a professional tone and also understand your story is from personal pronoun I, but also try to collectively pull in the we, because this is such a human experience we're all going through right now. By the time we move and we hope we can bottom out, on the health crisis of how it's impacting so many people through this social distancing and by really sheltering in place. But I think all of us are going to know somebody who's been furloughed or laid off. We're all going to know somebody who's contracted the virus. And sadly, we're going to know somebody or just one step away that is sadly passed on. So I just would say to you, yes, you can post and ask for leads. And I would do a lot of it in DM, in direct messaging, but really be mindful about what you're posting out publicly in this way about your experience. I certainly encourage it, but I just would meld that personal pronoun I with we in it as well, if that makes sense. I'll move to the Q&A here in a couple minutes. Okay, let's move to the next section here. So this is a little homework for you. This is one of my favorite tools, and it's a great way. Bridgespan is a terrific organization, and this really helps you to kind of diagnose what you're missing in your skills and your leadership abilities. I think a lot of times we think we have it all, but you need sometimes this type of survey to help you determine where the gaps are and where the holes are based on your own aspirations. You know, maybe you want to become a senior manager. Maybe you want to hit a director level, a VP level. Maybe you want to be, you know, a CEO. Maybe you want to be an entrepreneur. So, you know, what deficits do you have and where are your current strengths? By the way, by going through this, it'll also actually help you build out a lot of your personal branding because you'll better understand authentically who you are, where you are, and where you need to go. So highly recommend this tool. I'm going to leave this slide up for just a second just so you can see it and write down the link. But even if you just put in Bridgespan into your Google search, Building Future Leaders Diagnostics Survey, it'll be sure to pull up. And as you heard from Nakia and me in the beginning, this is being recorded and will be on our website too. Okay. So when is the time to start building your network? I don't think any of you are going to be surprised that I'm going to say it's right now. If you haven't been really spending the time on your network, it's now. If you haven't been spending time and thinking about who your mentors are and thinking about whether you even have sponsors right now, this is such a good time. We've got extra time. My daughter, who's 12 years old, is learning new magic tricks every day for her through YouTube. She's also learning how to play electric guitar, but she's also learning more advanced algebra and math right now because it's good to grow our brains. And this is an opportunity that we have to take on new hobbies, but don't forget about a really important pastime for building your professional career, and that's really working your network and growing it and managing it in a way that it's a two-way street with every member of your network. Okay, so with that, let me turn to the last slide here because I do want you to connect with me. And this is, you know, you can also connect if you are sharing the Equity Network information out with any of your friends on our seminars and the like, make sure they're within your network. Make sure you're looking at who's in their networks as well so you can continue, again, to grow in concentric circles. But you can follow me on Twitter at ChurchesK. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn. You can send me a private message. And you certainly can become a part of the Equity Network, as Nakia said, and just email her at equity@aauw.org. So I am going to stop. Hopefully you got that information there so that you can find me and be in touch. And now I'm going to go down to the Q&A portion here and just see what we have got here. Let's see here. And this is me because I'm a 50-year-old woman that has to wear glasses and then take them off and put them on. Yep, I've reached that age. There you go. So this is a good one. Tiffany brought up, I've always been confused as to how to effectively use LinkedIn, not sounding braggy by sharing accomplishments, but not just adding to the noise. Boy, is that ever true. And you know, particularly for women, we're so afraid to toot our own horns. So ask somebody, say, hey, you know, I did this. Should I put this out there? You can check yourself. I'm not kidding that I still have 5 people, you know, before I write, if I'm thinking about a new career opportunity, that I have them double check my resume and how I'm talking about myself, because I can underscore what I do so easily because we've been conditioned to do that as women for so long. So, you know, check it out with a friend, ask a colleague, and it's not noise. You know, if it's a new idea or you're sharing a project or something you're really proud of, that's a good thing. And people want good news right now. Trust me. I mean, we can get mired down in the bad news. And I have a tendency to read 2 or 3 newspapers in the middle of the night when I wake up, and then my mood level is like below sea level. So we want to see good news, and we want to applaud all that you're accomplishing. So don't worry about bragging. That's not something typically most people, and particularly men, care about is bragging. It's been kind of conditioned by us socially for far too long. So don't be afraid of it. Let's see, what other questions we have in here? Oh, that's great. What if you don't want a job, but you have a small business and would like more clients? LinkedIn tends to bring me people who want me to hire them, even though I have no plans to hire. Yep, totally true. So, you can still use it to talk about your business and what it's offering as in terms of service or product or retail or whatever. But I think you can also, you can also utilize Twitter and some of the others. It's not only LinkedIn. I gave a lot of examples on LinkedIn because that's so much about your professional network, but really consider using Twitter around what you're offering and what you're doing. I don't know what your business is, but I can tell you, that can be really, really valuable. Somebody has said, I'm wondering how much time you should spend on connecting. If your time is really limited, how do you know what's the best bang for your buck to build your client base? Boy, is that a loaded question. Woo, that's a toughie. Everybody has one. I can tell you that I have been staring at the green dot on my laptop for weeks on end, sometimes on Zoom for 8 hours a day or more. And the last thing I want to do is go back on my laptop to work on my virtual network. But so how much time you should spend, it depends on what you need to build and sustain your business and your client base. And if you're really in a growth spurt, I'd say more. And maybe you just block that off on your calendar and say, from 3 to 5 p.m. every Friday, I'm going to be really making sure I'm diligent on this, but I'm also going to add in a 10-minute window 2 other times during the week. You'll decide. I find that usually it's after my daughter goes to sleep that I'll be on LinkedIn and Twitter, and that's when I really have time, because during the day I'm just too bogged down with real work. So, now Priscilla has asked about whether it's worth it to go premium on LinkedIn or academia. I know a lot of friends who have. I have not yet. I have been toying with it, and I'm so impressed with the resources that LinkedIn are doing. I think they're up to 650 million members. I mean, it's crazy. It's humongous. So I think that really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, whether to go premium or not. So I've been toying with it, I'll tell you. I may end up doing it this month or next just for myself. We have for AUW when we're trying to hire and the like, and we have been hiring in this crisis. We've been onboarding new staff to work from home while we've been in this. And so, sometimes paying a premium can help you to make sure you're getting the quality and the quantity you need. So that's a toughie. Mentioned after the webinar that we hope that we practice enhancing our confidence. Can I provide some examples? Good question. Yeah, so, maybe it's a matter of if you've been nervous about reaching out to a mentor, you might even see if you yourself could pull together, maybe you're missing a networking session. Maybe typically at this time of month, you'd be with your alumni association network at a happy hour or an event or the like. What if you built your confidence in this way, where you just simply reached out to the alumni association organizer here in your community and said, hey, I'd like us to host a Zoom virtual happy hour with 15 or 20 people, and can you help me organize that, and can we build on that? You also can practice just in the same way. If you haven't taken our salary negotiation course online, it's Work Smart Online, you can practice even in your mirror, or talking to your cat or your plant or your partner or your roommate, whatever, of how you would network once we are able to network face to face. You can practice with your mom, you can practice with your dog, your sister, whatever, of how you would strike up conversations so that you're really, again, getting to we and not just I and what my needs are. You can be honest and authentic. Like I said, I can sometimes get depressed in this time, and sometimes I feel more buoyant. Being able to share what our shared experiences are during this time will help you to build your confidence in how you're actually talking about real networking and your real professional desires. I would also say, if you're not journaling right now, I'm a terrible journaler. I'm like on again, off again, on again, off again with it. But when I'm mindful about what I want to do and how I want to focus my attention, this is a great time to take a sense of your career and how you're thinking about it. Maybe you're in your first job, maybe you're in your sixth or seventh job, but we really want you to think about it. And I've been thinking about it a lot of, how do I move this organization where there's 50 employees and we've been working in an office environment and the team has pivoted so well. So I'm spending a lot of time on how can I be a better leader right now to help my team continue to grow in this weird time. And so that means I'm reaching out to my network and getting best ideas of what they're doing. So, you know, another easy way to network right now is just reach out to a couple people and say, how are you finding your work rhythms? How are you finding your ability to meet deadlines right now? Are you overworking, which we're finding so many people are, you know, or are you finding you've got huge swaths of time where you're having a hard time keeping your attention? It's another way just to network and really be human in this time while also getting potentially to professional development. So I hope that helps. Can you ask your virtual colleagues to introduce you to other colleagues via Zoom or Skype? Yeah, I would actually probably first say do an email introduction. I know that sounds old-fashioned. Again, I'm 50, so it is a little old-fashioned, but it might be better than doing you don't know what the other person is dealing with via Zoom or Skype. So, you know, you might say, hey, would you mind introducing me? And then you could follow up. You then get to follow up and say, hey, John or Nancy, it's great to virtually meet you over email. I'd love to, you know, have a virtual cup of coffee with you over Zoom or Skype or FaceTime. Would you be down for that? And most people would. I mean, look, this is such a weird, I'm loving knowing that all of you are on here tonight. And it's every time I get to see Nikia's face too, I get happy because we are dying for human connectivity. So I feel really confident that you're going to get a lot of yeses by going about it that way. Let me just look here. Oh, that's a great one. Is it okay to post or share AAUW's article that I find relatable? Of course. I mean, I post things from New York Times. I post things from other organizations. I've posted things from National Geographic. So absolutely, please don't ever worry about that. Now, this is from Judith, who says, I'm multilingual and can I post in other languages? See. Yes, do that. It also shows that you're adaptable, that you're a global thinker and a global citizen. And I'd say yes. I think that always is a really good idea. Tracy has asked about how do you build sponsors? This seems like something that is more difficult than building a mentor network. You hit the nail on the head, Tracy. This is a really hard one because you're trying to get people to advocate for you. So they could be people who are former bosses. They could be other leaders within your organization. Typically, sponsors are within your company or organization. Sometimes you have sponsors, like I have one I didn't even know I had, who was working on my behalf and now has become just a trusted both mentor and sponsor. You know, it's, I'd say, the more, you know, we talked earlier about quantitative and qualitative resorts. This is where bragging a little bit is important, and learning how to brag about your work is really, really important of proving your value. And if you need work on that, I really encourage you to go back to our Work Smart Online. It's totally free. And there's a whole section in that online work where you're working on how you're talking about your skills and abilities and your values and what you bring to the table. That'll help to attract other sponsors. Look, humans want to have qualified, hardworking people on their teams. I mean, I can't tell you how often I get excited about somebody who is on the team that thinks about something differently and tries, even when we fail sometimes, tries something new or succeeds at it and blows expectations away. That's the best way. But being quiet and just hoping, fingers crossed, that somebody is sponsoring you, not the way to get to it. You can ask your mentors about this too, if they've had sponsors and who their sponsors have been. So I have had in my life male and female mentors, and I have had, but oddly enough, primarily my sponsors have been men, not women. So it's something I'm actively been working on since I went into leadership roles. I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, to really try to sponsor other women in particular. Women need more sponsorship. We know we're woefully underrepresented in leadership roles in every single sector. Like, I work in the nonprofit sector. About 80% of the employees are female, but we hold about 20% of the CEO or executive director roles. So that's insanity to me. So I think if you're a woman in power, you damn well better be working to try and sponsor more women into leadership roles as well. So that's not a total answer, but it's telling you I would talk to your mentors about this too, and you can feel free to DM me about it as well. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. So somebody's written in, I don't have a question, but I just think it's important due to at least one of the attendees being laid off. I really, really agree. And she has put down nationwide resources and Goodwill Industries Craig program. A lot of localities are doing things through their community foundations, through Jewish foundations, religious organizations, et cetera, that can help you if you need more resources as well. And not knowing where this human is residing, do take advantage of your community resources. If you've got your mayor's office may have an office of women's empowerment that can help you to find new access to ideas as well. Any recommendations for hiring someone to help with a LinkedIn profile? I don't on that, Kara. I'm sorry. I've always done it kind of by the seat of my pants, which probably is not the best way. I actually looked at it early this morning. I'm like, whoo, I need to do some sprucing up of mine. So you'll see mine change over the coming weeks as well. But I would recommend, as opposed to paying somebody, first take a look at influencers, folks that you follow, and see how theirs are curated. And then think about your own work and your own passions as well to look at it in that way. Hope that helps. Michelle writes that she's feeling overwhelmed right now with all of the different places to share content. Don't pick all of them at one time, friends. Really, it's too much. So I primarily am on Twitter and LinkedIn are my two best. And I kind of surf a couple of others like Insta and Facebook. And, you can look through that. Don't feel like you have to be everywhere. You do want to be able to have, a social and digital presence, but it is overwhelming. And I will say also LinkedIn has a ton of great resources available. They've got great, you can also Google some things. Fortune and Forbes run a lot on women. Refinery 29 runs a lot on professional development as well. And so, but first and foremost, I'd probably just go to LinkedIn and some of their free resources available on how to think about it. Boy, this is a really big one and something I hope we can talk about in a future one too. Because as we live in this world of where we're all believing in intersectionality, inclusion, and diversity, we're not only facing bias around our gender, we're definitely seeing and facing and understanding bias around race and ethnicity. And so this anonymous person wrote in, how might one overcome racial bias sponsorees are subjected to? How should the sponsor respond to pushback? That's a biggie. And this is about not just being a bystander, it's about being an upstander. And I do a lot of work now with organizations we do at AAUW in how to, some of what I worry about as we think about inclusion and equity is we're putting all of the pressure on whoever the group is that needs to get ahead. So if it's women of color, if it's women in general, if it's LGBTQIA, as if it's their responsibility to change all of our workplace paradigms. And damn it, it's on all of us, every one of us. So I have to be an upstander and not a bystander and call out bias when I hear and see it. I recently did an interview about how, when you're in a meeting the old days when we used to have meetings in person in a boardroom, that women would get talked over, mansplained, or not heard at all. And shock of all shocks, the same thing is happening on Zoom today. And because our paradigms are the same. So, in that instance, I call when I'm on things that are non-AUW, and if I see bias, either racial, gendered, or ageism too, because I think in a lot of ways we get we push and say the baby boomers are too old, or the millennials and Gen Z just need to get more experience. We have all these ridiculous biases that are conscious and unconscious. But I call it out and I'll say, hey, John, actually Tracy was talking right there. Let's finish hearing what she had to say. Or because of the beauty of Zoom, if you've got 10, 12 different, I keep a tally so I know who's been speaking, and I can kind of mentally and note-wise know that I want to make sure I'm hearing from everybody's voices, because we know that ROI goes up when we have more inclusion and more diversity in our problem solving and thinking. So I realize that is a big nugget, and actually, Nakia, we should think about working on bias and discrimination as we think about mentorship, sponsorship, and promotions, because there's so much bias in hiring and promotion practices out there, even from well-intended people who just are not making the mark. Otherwise, we would see a lot more people of color and a lot more women in leadership roles in every single sector. So I'll put a pin in that and say to you that we should really think about doing that again soon. So with that, I am going to pause there because I know we're coming up on the end of the hour. There's like 34 more notes in the chat. Holy Toledo, that is great. We will be saving all of that. And I hope that some of this is helpful just to get you started in thinking about some ways to think about your network while we're living through this crisis and this really scary time together, and how you can still connect with human beings in a way that feels authentic, that respects their time and respects their needs as much as you getting what you need to continue to grow professionally and personally. And I do mean the latter part too. It's not just about your profession, but it's also about you personally and personal growth. We will be putting this up on the website. Both Nakia and I will go through the rest of the chats and Q&A, and thanks for all of the ideas for future work. We're trying to do these weekly, and they're free of charge, but I'm going to turn it over to Nakia now to close us out for the evening. And thank you all so much for being with us. It's really been a pleasure and a treat for me.
All right, thank you so much, Kim. That was great, and really, it really seems like you helped a lot of folks. We had so many questions and so many comments, so thank you all so much for that. I hope that today's webinar was helpful and that you feel good about building your network and putting yourself out there virtually. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar is recorded and will be available on our website next week. If you shared an idea for a webinar topic tonight, thank you so much. It's going to be so helpful for us moving forward and putting out content that's really helpful to you. If there's a topic that comes to mind later that you'd like us to cover, or something that we covered tonight that you would like to learn more about, just let us know by responding to the survey that I'll be sending out to all attendees, or again, shooting me an email at equity@aauw.org. We want to continue to hold programs like this that are responsive to your needs and help people in all stages of your career and in your life. But keep in mind that we're a nonprofit and we do need your support. So once this webinar closes, you'll be taken to our Equity Network donation page. So please consider being a part of the Equity Network by contributing to AAUW. We are grateful for whatever you might be able to afford during these times. I appreciate you all joining us tonight. Please stay safe, and I hope you'll tune in again for future Equity Network.
Nakia, I am going to jump in for 1 second because this is something I neglected to say, and I just saw one of these questions, and it was like, how do you get a template for this? Of how to see where your network is. So super fast. This is my crazy way of doing it, is I actually think about geography, race, ethnicity, industry sector, level of job within it, right? And then I think about those 4 categories we talked about earlier, the influencers, the creators, etc. So I really just do it on a Microsoft Excel, and I plug in and I look where the biggest holes are. And sometimes I'll scan it just in my Outlook contacts, and I can just put, this is a mentor, this is a sponsor, this is somebody in this industry. So you just get a sense of what's missing. And I guarantee for most of us, we tend to have people who look, sound, and are at the same level in our careers. So really take an honest look at that. But you can just create a simple matrix in Excel, and it's, it won't take you that long. So sorry for not adding that tip in earlier, but hope that helps. And Nakia, thanks for being my partner in crime on these. Great job as always. I really hope you'll take the survey. Please consider, if you can, making a contribution to us. We're doing all of these free of charge. But we'd love to have you really continue to be a part of the Equity Network virtually for the time being, and we hope in person and virtually in the future. And I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.